Today I'm talking about how to set boundaries in your business to protect your time and energy so that you have more of both of those things to work on the most important tasks and take your business forward. Now, I'm particularly good at setting and then sticking to boundaries. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the 3 types of boundaries you need to set for business success. The main reason that people are probably not respecting your boundaries. I'm going to give you 4 steps to setting clear boundaries, and also I'm going to talk about how do you gently enforce boundaries when a client breaks them. So I'm Watkin of Selling from the Heart, and I teach heart-centered business owners how to enroll and attract more clients and grow their businesses without resorting to manipulative sales and marketing techniques. I recently released a video that's been very popular on how I run a business with a chronic health condition. And one of my clients pointed out that I'd missed out a really key thing from that video, all about boundaries. It's such an important one that it merits a video all of its own. So why do we need boundaries in business? Well, because I have issues with my health. Protecting my energy is just as important as protecting my time. And so I have boundaries designed to protect both of those things. Now, I see a lot of my clients struggle with their boundaries. It might be demands from family members and friends, which means they don't get enough focus time to make progress on key projects. It might be responding to messages and emails from clients at all hours and giving a lot more than was originally agreed. And even worse, helping people for free when they should be paying you. And this is especially a struggle in a heart-centered business, because if you're anything like me, you really do want to help everyone. But the thing is, you only have so much capacity. And if you don't take care of these precious resources, your time, your energy, and your attention, you end up with not enough of them left for the things and the people that matter most to you. I deeply care about every business owner being successful. It's part of my DNA to want to help everybody. But I know that if I try to help everyone with no boundaries, then I would end up burned out, have no quality of life, and probably end up not being able to help anybody as a result. So there are 3 sorts of boundaries I recommend you put in place to support your success in business. Number 1, boundaries with yourself, because often we can be our own worst enemies. Boundaries with friends and family members, and of course boundaries with clients. But before we get into all of that, I want to talk about what I call the invisible fence. Now, I see this very often with my clients where it feels like people are taking advantage. Family members calling for favours at short notice, or clients needing help outside of working hours or extra to agreements. But most of the time, the client or family member isn't even aware they're breaking a boundary because they didn't know it was there. And to illustrate this, where I live currently, there is a garden out the front, and it goes from the front of the building to the pavement, and there is no boundary there. That's its original design. Some of my neighbours have put up small fences or walls or hedges, but I don't have that at my property. Now imagine one lovely sunny summer's day, I come home to find a family who have set up a picnic on my own front garden. Kids are playing football, Mum and Dad kicking back in their deck chairs. And I said, get off my grass, it's my private garden. Well, they could easily argue with me that they thought it was a public area, because after all, there was no fence or other boundary to mark the fact that this was private and that they were not welcome to be there. And this is exactly what your own boundaries might be like. Because I find that I very rarely have a problem with a client breaking my boundaries because I'm clear on them up front, and I'm also very good at enforcing them. So with that in mind, this is how I encourage you to set boundaries in your business. Number 1, decide what those boundaries are. Number 2, make people concerned aware of those boundaries. Number 3, enforce those boundaries. And then, of course, there's a 4th, which is that you do get to decide who can break your boundaries and in what circumstances, because we have to be pragmatic. And, especially if you've maybe got very young children, you can't very well say to them, please don't interrupt me between X time and X time. So let's look at those three sorts of boundaries now. First of all, boundaries with yourself. Now, these are there to protect your own energy and help you to take care of yourself. And these might be things like set start and finish times for your work. Like, I've always had a fixed time beyond which I don't work, unless I'm doing a live session in one of my courses or my memberships. I also have a rule that I don't work on a Sunday. You might have rules like times when you check your emails and respond to messages and social media. You might put a boundary around how long you spend checking emails and replying to messages each day. You can even set a boundary on which channels you're available on and which ones you respond to. I also, in my case, I have a rule of no household chores during my working day. For me personally, this helps me with focus and productivity. And because I have a clear cut-off time and I generally don't work at weekends, I've got plenty of time to do my household chores outside of my working time. And it's important that once you've set the boundaries for yourself, that you actually stay within them. Because sometimes, like I said, we can be our own worst enemy. And this is what will protect you from burnout, developing health issues. And also, very importantly, it helps ensure you stay in love with your business. Second is boundaries with family members. Now, like I said, you do have to be pragmatic. And if the school calls in the middle of the day, of course, you're going to pick up that call. But think about what boundaries you could put in place to actually support you in your business that would make sense. So as an example here, when I first started this business, and it wasn't really a business yet, I had no clients, I was still figuring it out, my mum would phone me for a chat in the middle of the day. And then so did my friends. And in the end, all I was doing was chatting to people and sometimes going out for coffee or lunch, and I just wasn't moving forward in the business. And one day my mum rang and I said to her, if I was still working in an old corporate sales job, would you be phoning me now? And she said, well, no, because you'd be at work. And I said, exactly. I'm at work now. I'm not available. I'll call you back later. And that for me was the beginning of a process where I trained friends and family that if they left a message or tried to reach me during the day, I would respond after I'd finished work. Again, you get to decide who and when you break those boundaries for. So if one of my best friends calls me up in the middle of the day, I'm going to answer that call because I know it's probably because something is wrong and I want to be available to them. Then third is boundaries with clients. And these will be things like what days and times can your clients reach you? And through what channels do they get in contact with you? How quickly are you likely to respond? What types of things you will be helping them with and what you don't help them with, just to manage those expectations. For example, I use email as communication with clients only. There are so many channels out there, it would be overwhelming for me and my small team to keep up with all the channels. So we use email only for communication, apart from with private clients who can contact me via WhatsApp, but that also has boundaries about how often they can leave messages and exactly when I'm likely to respond. Within my membership, I answer questions via live calls and in the Facebook group, and I don't answer questions privately. So if somebody emails us privately to ask a question, we reply and ask them to post it in the Facebook group. And then once you've set these boundaries, as I said, step 2 of setting your boundaries is to communicate the boundaries to your clients. I tend to have client guidelines that are separate to the terms and conditions for the program. And then also for our membership, we have a welcome pack and also a welcome area in the membership. They're just outlining the guidelines for the way that I work so that I'm managing expectations and I'm setting out my boundaries. And then number 3, almost the most important part of this process is you then need to enforce these boundaries. If you don't enforce them, they may as well not exist. Because the more you agree to do things outside of your agreement, and the more you go overtime on your calls, the more you're available, evenings and weekends, the more your client will learn that this is completely okay and even normal. And equally, I promise you, the more you enforce your boundaries, the more your clients will respect both the boundaries and you. So how do you enforce your boundaries? I know this can be tricky. It is for me too, because I never want a client to feel bad. And I also value my clients, so I want them to feel that I care about them. So what I tend to do is if a client breaks a boundary, the first time they do it, I will normally let them, but I will gently remind them of the boundary. So an example of this would be if a client emailed me to ask me to review their sales page, but the package they'd purchased didn't include copy and asset review in it. In that case, I would probably send them some high-level feedback and also gently remind them that copy review isn't included in their program, but in future I'd be happy to either deduct it from their remaining mentoring hours or give them the option of buying some extra time. Now, how do you enforce boundaries with a family member? Now, let me remind you of an important phrase. No is a complete sentence. And a very acceptable sentence is also, no, I'm working, or I'm working on my business. A few years ago, I moved to live near my family for the first time as an adult, and a couple of times my sister unannounced with my young niece straight from school saying, can you look after her for a few hours while I go and do XYZ? Now, I could see where this was heading, and so I started to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm working. And my sister quickly learned that if she wanted me to babysit, she needed to arrange it in advance and at a time that worked for me. And what about the people who are already in the habit of taking advantage? Well, you absolutely can enforce a new boundary. So you might say to that friend who asks you for favors all the time, I'm focused on growing my business for the foreseeable future, so I won't be able to help you at short notice anymore. Please, can you make alternative arrangements? And people do soon learn. Most people are good people. They don't want to take advantage, but if you're making their life easier, then of course they're going to make the most of that. So I hope you found this helpful. Setting clear boundaries is all part of creating a business you can stay in love with for the long term, because you're not burning out trying to keep up with everything. And you can learn about the key foundations for a sustainable business in my free guide, Create a Business You Can Fall in Love With, at katherinewatkin.com/free guide. And I'll also pop a link below the video. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give me some YouTube love by leaving a comment or a like, or even subscribe so that you can hear more from me. I look forward to seeing a lot more of you. Bye-bye.